Hello Skillets, welcome back to Cast Iron, the podcast all about rock and metal, where we take a singular album every episode, go deep dive and see what it's about. I am Lewis Clark from UK Scum Scene and Save Driven and other bits and pieces, Cranston I guess, and I'm joined as always by my lovely friend Alan Williamson. Hello Alan.
Hello Lewis.
Right, so we had a bit of an interesting one this time, so I decided I wanted to do some Mastodon. And you gave me two options.
First of all, I shook my fist in glee. I thought, finally, we're finally doing Mastodon.
Yeah.
Because I'm a really big Mastodon fan. And we give you two options.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So you gave me Leviathan and you gave me Crack the Skye. And I listened to both. Gave them both a fair shot first before I decided to commit to a singular record. And yeah, I liked Leviathan, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's a little bit, it's got its style, it's got its structure very down. Every song is quite similar in that regard. And as much as I enjoyed it, I definitely favoured Crack the Skye because I just liked the variety of it. I think it was a little bit more interesting.
You said to me that Leviathan, they had their foot on the gas the whole time.
Yeah.
I think that was the way you described it whenever we were instant messaging about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing for me as well with that record was vocally it is just that sort of growly, sort of heat-like singing the entire time, and with very little, divergence from that at all. Like it's you get one sound and you get it across the entire record, which is fine. Like there are certain bands that can do that, but for me personally, after listening to Crack the Skye, I was just like, okay, there's a lot more to discuss here, and I was very much into it.
Yeah, and even though I gave you a choice, it was a bit of a, not quite a Sophie's choice, but it was very heavily weighted. I'm giving you a choice, but I really want you to pick Crack the Skye, because Leviathan was Mastodon's sophomore album after Remission, and that was where they hit it big, and that was where I first heard Mastodon, was through Leviathan, and it was a friend who actually wasn't really that into metal. He had said, "Oh, you need to check this out," especially tracks like Blood and Thunder, which most people have heard, which I think is probably like one of the best metal songs of the past couple of decades.
Oh, it's the riff in Blood and Thunder is amazing, isn't it?
Along with like Iron Tusk and stuff like that, and we'll certainly get into some of the stylistic differences, but it is a lot of Brent Hines vocal deliveries. A lot of all hands to the tiller, and it's a concept album about Moby Dick, so it's still got its proggy weirdness. But after that, they did Blood Mountain, then they did Crack the Skye, and then I'm going to go through memory and see if I remember the rest after that. After this one, they did The Hunter, then they did Once More Round the Sun, then Emperor of Sand, and then Hushed and Grim, which is their most recent one that came out last year. It was a double album. Yeah. Ooh, double albums. Ooh.
But yeah, so as we have discussed, the choice for this episode was Mastodon's Crack the Skye. So yes, Alan, how have you been, and what have you been up to? Really, like what have you been listening to? I guess is the big thing at the moment.
Oh, all sorts. So we've just been on a road trip to the Central West. We went to the Parkes Radio Telescope, and on the way there, I had to get up and really get moving because we wanted to beat the traffic out of Sydney.
Yep.
So it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I was making coffee and had Iron Maiden's 2 Minutes to Midnight cracking.
Lovely, lovely.
So I had the new wave of British heavy metal essentials playlist going. But most recently, I have been listening to the tracks released from the Halo Effect album, Days of the Lost, which is a new supergroup, which is basically everyone you like from In Flames, plus Michael Stana, from Dark Tranquillity, and the first 3 tracks have been excellent.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed the new single. I think that has instantly rocketed high up onto my most wanted list for this year. Looking forward to that record a lot.
What else have I been listening to? I've listened to the new Meshuggah album, Immutable, which is okay, but I think not their finest work. But enjoying
I've heard
a band
middling
called,
things with that one.
But enjoying a band called Night, Nite. They have it's kind of like blackened new wave of British heavy metal. It's called Voices of the Cronian Moon. That's pretty fun.
That sounds really cool.
And I have listening to the new Animals as Leaders, which is pretty good, but acquired taste.
Yeah.
Tried the new Monuments album on Friday. It seems very good at first spin, but that was in the car, and our car has no bass frequencies coming out of the out of the speakers. And I've been enjoying the new Ghost album as well, which is quite different from them. It's a bit more stadium rock.
Very well.
It's very different, but it's a lot of fun. It's definitely hard to dislike. So quite a lot, and there's a lot on the horizon. There's that Ibaraki album, which is. It is Matt Heafy from Trivium, his black metal project.
He's a black metal product with his San, isn't it?
And there's a track here is called Ronin, which is Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance on it, which is very good actually. It's quite fun.
Wow.
So that's going to be a really interesting one when it comes out. There's new Rammstein coming out this year. Malevolence have a new album coming out this year. They're a lot of fun. New Porcupine Tree. There's a lot. There's new Coed and Cambria. Oh boy. It sounds weird from the first few songs. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it, but I've got high hopes. So there's a lot coming out this year, and there's also meant to be at some point a new Nebula Scaris album, all kinds. New Moontooth album. Moontooth are pretty fun. There's a lot coming out this year. I think we have reached the end of the COVID restrictions in terms of recording and even just manufacturing and mastering. So there's a lot of albums coming out now.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it definitely feels like there was a big delay on vinyl production and things like that, but I was pushing an awful lot of things back, and I think now that's sort of like maybe the delay is still there, but I think the stuff that got delayed is now finally coming out, essentially, which is what's happening there. But yeah, myself, I've been listening to a lot of Dillinger Escape Plan, really kind of missing them at the moment. Listening to Option Paralysis again for the first time in ages, and that really just, what a band. I really missed them a lot. Off the back of that, I was re-listening to Distrage, who I don't know if I've ever introduced you to, but they're basically Between the Buried and Me meets Sixth, I guess, sort of techie kind of thing. I don't know if you'd like it.
Further listening back in the day, like in the Sixth album.
Most probably, but yeah, no, I very much enjoy going back to giving them a listen. I discovered The Prodigy for the first time recently. Right. I know that seems like a bizarre thing to discover this late in my listening career, but no, I found the DVD which has all the music videos on it in a charity shop, and I was just like, oh yeah, I really like The Prodigy. Maybe I should listen to more of The Prodigy, and realise, wow, yeah, The Prodigy are pretty fantastic, aren't they? And then the other thing was the most recent Full of Hell album, Garden of Burning Apparitions, which is grindcore, and it is intense and very in your face, and it mixes a lot of sort of like power electronics into it as well. So it's just this wall of noise. Very, very good record. I absolutely adore Full of Hell, and everything they do is fantastic in my eyes. But yeah, I hadn't got around to that one, and that came out late last year.
I have been listening to a lot of Mastodon as well, it has to be said. And I started to make notes on both albums because I decided to hedge my bets and write a little bit about both.
Yeah.
Don't know what my line of notes are for Leviathan, because I don't know if I tossed them or if they are kept there. But yeah, if anybody wants to talk Leviathan, in a bonus episode.
Absolutely. Like it's not off the cards, mate. It's not off the cards.
But so Mastodon normally get called like a sludge metal band or stoner metal band with a bit of prog stuff, and I think they started off very sludgy, and then they've gradually incorporated more proggy and weird space rock and psychedelia elements. And you'll hear a bit of that on Crack the Skye. There's quite a lot of that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're interesting in that they verge between sludgy and heavy, and also sometimes some albums can be quite light and poppy. The Hunter and Once More in the Sun are quite poppy albums. Emperor of Sand is really weird space stoner rock stuff, and Hushed and Grim is probably the closest they get in sound to Crack the Skye since this album, which was a 2009 release.
Yeah.
So that's they're an interesting bunch, and I think they probably are one of the most popular and most critically acclaimed modern metal bands. I can't think of any band that have been around, that have, I guess, formed recently that would be as popular as Mastodon.
Absolutely. And I think as well, they pretty much had the same lineup their entire career. I know that's kind of a rarity with modern metal bands. I think there may have been a little bit of a change in their early days, but maybe just one member or something. But there's pretty much the same four guys the entirety of their career making music anyway.
Well, there is one change, slight change to the lineup is that Crack the Skye is the first album where Brian Dealer, the drummer, sings.
Okay.
And before that, certainly Leviathan, I think a lot of it's mostly Brent Hines. And I've got some liner notes for the first track, so you can pick out who's singing at what points. So the band is Brian Dealer, who's a drummer. You've got Brent Hines, who is the lead guitarist, and he does the more, for want of a better term, sort of southern drawl heat vocals. You got Bill Kelleher, who's a rhythm guitarist and does no singing, and you've got Troy Sanders, who's the bassist. And he does more of the clean. So Brian does the really clean, higher pitched stuff. Troy is also quite clean, but he's probably slightly lower range. And then Brent is more the growly heat vocals. So this is the first album when Brian actually sings, and I guess there's a reason for that, because this album is a weird concept album, because I like my weird concept albums. And it's kind of about two things. It's allegedly about Tsarist Russia and wormholes and a paraplegic who goes back through time, but you don't really need to worry about that. What it is more about, there's a subtext about Brian's sister Skye, who took her own life when she was age 14.
Right. Okay.
And what Brian had said during the release of the album was, he said, "My sister passed away when I was a teenager, and it was awful. And there's no better way to pay tribute to a lost loved one than having an opportunity to be in a group with my friends and we make art together. Her name was Skye, so Crack the Skye means a lot of different things. For me personally, it means the moment of being told you lost someone dear to you. That moment's enough to crack the sky." So there's kind of two things going on, and that's part of the reason why the vocals are, like, it's the first time Brian's doing some of those vocals. And some of the tracks have this weird plot about the guy psychically traveling back through time and space, but some of it's actually really personal. So it's a very interesting setup for a concept album compared to Leviathan, which is just straight up, it's Moby Dick. Emperor of Sand's about, I think Emperor of Sand is something, it's a sort of meditation on, I think one of the band members' wives had cancer, or one of the band had cancer, but it's about this guy who gets exiled from a kingdom and cursed or something. It's really weird. This is one of their trippier concept albums, as opposed to some of the more straight up ones that they've done. So that's the kind of context coming into this, and I guess we should just get into it, shouldn't we? We should just get into it and see if. I always say this, but if you didn't like this album, this could be the moment enough to crack the sky. This could be the end of the podcast.
Okay, well, I won't bury the lead, but we'll get to that when we finish up. But yeah, we kick things off with track one, which is Oblivion. So, Oblivion then. Nice thrashy riff. Instantly reminded of Gojira, actually, on the start of this. I think so. Yeah, there's like three members sharing vocal duties. But it's like mostly singing on this record, which I was really taken with, especially after listening to Leviathan, which was mostly screaming or growling. I was very much taken by that. It helped elevate the songs, because as much as the instrumentation is fantastic, don't get me wrong, I love the Leviathan instrumentation, songs were very similar from song to song, and I think just having that extra vocal melody really helps differentiate the tracks on this record. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It stands out against the sort of crunchy instrumentation, which is really cool. I really enjoyed the nice moody solo in the middle eight of this one. I thought that was really cool. And the whole song itself has a very sort of ethereal, sort of like stoner metal quality to it. Yeah, I thought this was a strong opener. Really enjoyed it. Those are my main notes on that one. I don't know if you want to add anything, Alan, on that one.
Oh, what an opener. So
yeah.
I think this is the third best Mastodon opening track. I think their best album opener has got to be Blood and Thunder.
Yeah.
And my second favorite Mastodon opener is Black Tongue off the Hunter, and this is probably the third. And then I guess fourth is probably Sultan's Curse off Emperor of Sand. It's very fun too.
Cool.
Start quite slow and ominous. It builds into this bone-crushing riff. It's really fast, chugging. And then by the chorus, you've got that classic. One of their kind of classic sounds is like this bendy southern rock style. And also their kind of signature sound is a lot of bendy southern rock, intricate riffs and rolling military drum fills. And Brand Dealer was originally, I think he was a trained jazz drummer. And you can hear a lot. You can really hear that. So you hear a lot of mega fills. So the singers are so Brand Dealer is doing the verse. He opens up with the I flew beyond the sun before it was time. That's him. Troy Sanders is doing the bridge. The how can I tell you that I failed? That's Troy Sanders. And Brent Hines is the chorus. He's the he's the kind of he's got that southern sound because they're a Georgian band, so they are from the south. And what I love about Oblivion is you think you know what it's about. You think that you've got really strong verse, then you've got that chorus, and then it goes back to it, and you think, okay, I get the idea of what's going on here. And then there's this huge overdriven breakdown about the 4-minute 28 mark, which you think is the end. And then it kind of sweeps back up and it goes into the chorus again. And I just never get tired of that bit in that song ever.
No, the structure's fantastic.
Love the solo, and I love that incredibly heavy breakdown. It's so good. It's so good. And Jess and I were listening to this in the car on the way home today. And she said, "Is this your favorite track on the album?" And I just said, "This is the track of the year every year. This is the track. This is the song."
Don't spoil your favorite choice straight away, man.
It's maybe I have a different favorite one. There's a lot of favorite bits on here, but yeah, I absolutely love Oblivion. I think it's an awesome opener to the track and gives you an idea of what it's going to be like. Which is, yes, there's going to be heavy bits, but the fast bits also, like you said, these weird ethereal, ominous bits to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such an interesting song.
No, I agree completely. I really, really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really strong opener. Okay, we'll move on to track 2 then, which is Divinations. So I thought the banjo intro is quite an inspired choice on this one. But yeah, I another excellent riff in the verses of this. I thought that was just a really powerful choice. Vocals are more screamy on this. So I'm assuming this is a what is it, Brent Hines, did you say? There's kind of this
I think Brent Hines is doing the verses in this one, and the bridge bit where he's singing "No Escape," that's Troy Sanders, or it's either Troy or Bran. But I haven't broken down every single one, but there's 3 of them. They're singing different bits, and there's also a guest vocals from Scott Kelly on the track "Crack the Sky." But
he features on a few records with them. Yes,
he's from Neurosis of theirs. Yes. I'm not honestly. I'm not familiar with Neurosis, but I'm familiar with him being on a lot of the Mastodon albums.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed the chorus on this one. I think the singing is absolutely fantastic. Very suitably sort of grandiose. Really elevates the song. And the solo in the middle eight.
It's got a bit of it's got a bit like Miserlou in it, doesn't it? It's got a bit of Dick Dale to it.
Absolutely. I can hear that completely. Yeah, no, I mean, like you say, that you can hear that sort of classic rock influence on them, and I'm pretty sure as well. I don't know if you follow the channel 2 Minutes to Late Night on YouTube. It's been a real a real comfort view over the lockdowns and things. They basically do bedroom covers of songs with like supergroups, and they just invite loads of people in and create a supergroup every time. And Brent Hines did a Mountain cover recently, which was really cool with them. And that's you can obviously hear he's got a real love for that sort of southern rock. So yeah, it's really cool to see his influences and things. But yeah, Divinations is fantastic. I think it's the shortest song on the record. It's kind of in and out, doesn't muck around, gets everything, gets all its ideas on the tables very quickly. I had a great time with Divinations. I think it's a fantastic song.
This one's a fucking banger, isn't it?
Yeah,
I love that it keeps up the momentum right off the back of Oblivion, which is a fairly long opening track. More
Absolutely.
bendy, noodly riffs. I particularly like the No Escape riff.
Oh yeah, totally.
And the chorus is good with him just screaming "Fire in the eye." It's so good. The whole thing is just beastly.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good song. I think by this point I was just like, okay, yeah, we're going to be good with Mastodon.
We're gonna have a good time with this.
We're gonna have a good time with this album, totally. But yeah, not much to say about that album because it's, like I say, it's the shortest song on the record, but I very, very much enjoyed it. So we move on to track 3, which is Quintessence. So, speaking of Dillinger earlier, the guitar work on this one is very mathy, actually, and the vocals actually reminded me a lot of Greg Puciato from Dillinger Escape Plan. So instantly I was just like, okay, you've got me again, you've grabbed me, there's something here I can latch onto. I really like the thrashy sort of let it go refrain. That's really fun. That's awesome fun, and I like the back and forth as well between the sort of mathy lead guitar, and then you get like a big chunky riff. I love the structure of this one. I thought it was doing a lot of interesting things, and again, it's different from the last track, different from the previous one. Always trying something new across this record.
It's getting a bit weirder, and it's still full of energy, especially in the chorus, which I love and think is a really, really nice uplifting piece of music. Yeah,
no, I agree completely. And then you get that breakdown, that big sort of spacey, stonery breakdown. I was just, I was just loving it, to be honest. I think this is just, I love their structure of their music. I think they're doing really interesting things. The variety of vocal styles just keeps it engaging and interesting. It doesn't bog itself down by being overly heavy or overly screamy. There's always just something different coming in the next passage. It's just like, just great songwriting in general. I think Quintessence was another fantastic song.
I don't really have much more to add than that. I think it's a nice transition from the more bone crunching first couple of tracks into this more strange ethereal space where it's setting you up for the prog to come. Because up to this point in the album, it's fairly conventional, even though it's got a plot to it. And I need to look up the lyrics to find out what's actually going on, because I don't pay that much attention to it. Something about demon skin being covered in fine mist, and I totally forget what on earth is going on about, but he's freeing the quintessence. It's something about going through a weird portal back in time into the mind of Rasputin. That's genuinely what it's about.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That's pretty mad. But no,
it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter at all. But yeah, like you say, these first 3 tracks in particular are quite similar structure. They're very much the sort of, I don't want to say pop song structure, but you know what I mean. It's verse, chorus. We get a bridge, and in the middle, and it's but that's doing it a disservice, because the actual technicality of the instrumentation is just so interesting and wild and out there. It's really fun to listen to.
And they pack a lot in. Like how many times did you listen to this album?
A couple of times, two times.
Two times.
Yeah. So there you go.
How many times have I listened? 2,000 probably. But did you
you're
find
introducing
that
me
as
to
you,
this, right?
Did you find that as you got onto your second play that like you were hearing different things you hadn't heard the first time, and there's quite a lot more to it in terms of intricacy and especially the depth of the riffs and stuff?
Well, my first listen was very much, okay, I'm testing the waters here. I'm not making any notes just so far at the moment. I just want to see how I vibe with it and check, make sure that I'm there's enough here for me to talk about. And then second time it was like a more studious sort of like, okay, I'm making notes, making time stamps and stuff when things really jump out at me. And yeah, you do start to pick apart the songs a lot more, and it's just like, okay, there's some really interesting moments here. And when we talk about verses and choruses on this record, there is so much to those verses and choruses. It's not as simple, okay, here's your riff that's going to follow for the entire chorus. It bends and does different things, and they'll introduce little refrains and stuff that make up that whole piece. But yeah, so I think that's obviously where the progressive element comes in. But if we move on to track 4,
on progressive element, Czar. So this one is actually like a 4-part suite. It is 4 movements. You've got Usurper, Escape, Martyr, and Spiral. And up until the recording of this podcast, I had no idea which bit was which. So,
yeah,
where the 4 bits fall in is the first piece, the Usurper. That is the bit with the Don't Stay, Run Away lyric. That's the quieter bit. Then there's Escape. That's the heavy bit. Then Martyr is a very short bit, around 6 minutes 50, when the heaviness cuts out for about 30 seconds. And then Spiral is a heavy bit again with the line, he's spiraling up through the crack in the sky. So that's the kind of 4 main chunks of it. And I guess that makes sense.
It's kind of like a return to Usurper, isn't it? Like, as well. Like,
a little bit.
Get, like, a repeat of the vocals from there. So this is just a behemoth. So 11 minutes, a massive prog metal thing, 4 movements. I've got so many notes on this one. So moody keyboard intro leads into a really off-kilter vocal melody, accompanied by some really suitable spacey guitar work. 3:46, we finally get the huge groovy riff, that second part of Escape, basically. Great vocal melody to accompany it too. 5:05, we get another massive groovy riff. I just really enjoying just the guitar work on this one across the board. I think when Mastodon decide to knuckle down and go absolutely hell for leather, they don't have to turn up some amazing riffs. And then 7 minutes, we switch again to the sort of moodier refrain, and that's interrupted at 7:30 with another enormous groove. Switches to a more moody space rock sequence, and it's punctuated with an absolutely epic solo. Just a hugely atmospheric and expansive song. The song rounds itself out with a return to this sort of Usurper melodies from the start. It's just easily the most progressive track on the album so far. It is an absolute beast of a thing. It's fantastic. Like, I can't praise it enough. Like, it's expanding on ideas from the previous tracks, but actually, giving them a little bit more room to breathe. And not following the traditional sort of pop structure of verses and choruses, bridges, and going back to a chorus again. It's just a lot more of an interesting track to explore, and it flows beautifully. It doesn't feel unnatural. It doesn't have like that sort of stop-start weird tempo changes that we get in a lot of mathcore stuff. It's very much a case of like, okay, this sequence follows this sequence, and it very naturally flows into each other. It's brilliant, isn't it? It's an absolute album highlight.
Well, you might very well think that. I couldn't possibly comment. So, of course, I obviously agree, and I think so. We've talked a bit about prog in various albums because I keep nominating them. And we've talked a bit about Dream Theater's approach to prog quite recently. We've covered Tool before.
We've done Deer and Grey as well.
Different approach. Deer and Grey have a very different approach. And this to me is an example of prog done really well.
Yeah.
And the reason it's done really well because it justifies its own length. You've got a really nice build-up in the usurper section, and then you get this massive payoff about 3:45 with a really, really good palm-muted riff at about 4 minutes in. It's the second best riff on the album.
Yep.
The first one, well, that'll come later.
Okay.
Probably the second best riff on the album. And again, especially at the end when it gets heavy, when we're spiraling up through the crack in the sky, but this massive solo with serious southern rock influences. It's like a sludgy Freebird.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree. It's fantastic, man.
So good, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's a very fast 11 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. I agree completely. That's always the thing, isn't it? With long songs, especially with progressive music as well. You often find when people do it badly, it's that horrible dirge where it's just like a single riff is being absolutely beaten to death for absolutely ages, and it's like there's not enough to engage me the entire time, like, whereas this, every sort of musical passage in this just is, there's just so much happening at any given point. It always keeps you engaged. It's always interesting. It's always fun to listen to. And like I say, it flows together so wonderfully. Like it's a real prog metal masterpiece.
And this is not a long album. It's only 50 minutes.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
The last album we did,
songs,
Korn's Untouchables, was much longer than this.
Oh, yes, it was.
Both in literal length and the feeling of length.
Completely.
And I think that's one of the interesting things about it. You think, oh, these tracks are 10 minutes. Oh, the last Baron's 13 minutes long. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not that long an album. It's only 7 tracks.
Yeah, no, this is the thing, isn't it? It's, again, it's weird when you think about songs like Divinations, which are genuinely quite short. They fit. They have a place because the idea and the concept was enough for that amount of time. And it's the same with the Tsar. Regardless of whether it's on the opposite end of the spectrum being 11 minutes long, all the ideas are there, and it justifies its length entirely by being interesting and engaging the entire time.
That's it. You haven't got the sort of fluff tracks or the duff. There's no fat on this.
Absolutely. I one of the things I was doing as I was making notes throughout this was putting a little thumbs up emoji next to the songs I liked, and you'll be pleased to know there are no songs I didn't like on this record.
seven thumbs. Is that the?
Yeah.
Is that how we're going to rate albums from now? 7 and 7 thumbs.
But it was just good to track sometimes, because we do find ourselves with records where sort of the back half kind of gets a bit flabby and a bit like, we'll just pack something in there for the sake of having an extra track or whatever. This didn't feel like that at all. There was never a time across this record where I was like, okay, we could have probably done without that, that didn't have. But no, honestly, like everything just had cool ideas and justified its length or whatever. Not that a lot of these songs need to justify their lengths because they're not that long in the grand scheme of things, most of the tracks sort of average around 5 minutes. So, it's a good time. Very approachable as prog metal albums go.
Yeah.
So let's move into track 5.
Onto Thumb 5 out of 7. Yeah. This is Ghost of Corellia. So this is a back half banger, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yeah, I get to roll out the little. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but I've created a back half banger little jingle that I throw in now. Here it is. Back half banger. But yeah, This is excellent. Yeah, it kicks off with another huge lead guitar melody, super expansive, sounds massive. Get those lovely off-kilter vocals again. Makes it very psychedelic.
Yes.
Big groove in the chorus. Absolutely love that thundering sort of stompy riff. Suitable use of like toms and bass drum to accompany it, which I thought was really cool. 240, we get another great thrashy riff. Really enjoyed that. Starts to get really heavy at this point in the song. Then we switch back to the sort of spacey lead guitar melody from the start. It's another proggy track that does a lot in its relatively short length, to be honest. It's a really cool little song. And yeah, it's weird to say at 5 minutes 24, this is a cool little song. But it doesn't feel like it's a particularly long song at all. It's just cool ideas the entire time, always engaging. Yeah, I loved it. It's really cool stuff.
Look, I think that's fair. It's a cool little song because it is a lot shorter. It's a change of pace after the Tsar.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you said, lovely riff in the intro. I don't think we've talked enough about how great the drums are in this album.
This is the thing. I think they kind of get lost in the mix a little bit. That's the one thing I'd say that maybe there's a little bit of a negative against, is that the drum performance itself is absolutely fantastic and really technical and interesting. Got these lovely sort of like fills where it sort of like flows across the kit, and it sounds so nice together. You can tell that's a trained jazz musician on the drums. Like, it's not traditional metal drumming. It's not like heavy use of double bass and, snappy snare drum all the time. It's very much a sort of more organic drumming sound, which is really cool. But like I say, it does kind of get sort of lost in the mix ever so slightly. I think the guitars are very much a lot higher and crunchier in the mix, and the vocals in particular.
I think that's probably fair. And if you think about other Mastodon albums, tracks like Iron Tusk off Leviathan are drum-driven tracks.
Yeah,
they open with those
totally.
huge, big drum fills. I think the drums are much more like prevalent than Leviathan. They're much more in your face. Tracks like the Mother Load off Once More Around the Sun. Another very heavy on the drums. Kind of track. It's one of the things I really love about Mastodon is that Brand's an exceptional drummer. It's a very unique sound. But I think that's fair for this album, that the drums aren't as prominent in the mix. Not to say it's badly mixed, just that
no.
on this album they're not taking center stage the way they often do. And it's the most impressive thing is that he does do the singing live while he's also clattering the drums, and that is
so. How
that's
does he do
amazing
it? Does he use a headset, or does he just sort of lean over into another mic?
Ooh, I think he leans over.
Yeah, which is, I always find that very impressive if a drummer can continue to maintain the reach across a big kit and also sort of lean into a mic and maintain that sort of level of accuracy. I think that's quite an impressive thing to be able to do.
I'm looking it up. Don't see a microphone there. He leans over.
There's
a picture of him in Wikipedia. Rock in Park in 2014, which I think was around the time I saw them, and he looks like he's leaning into a microphone and singing, or perhaps he's eating a sausage while he's playing the drums for
also quite an impressive task to be doing while you're drumming.
Once more around the gums.
But I did wonder because especially behind a kit, to maintain melodies and not have your movement affect your voice. I mean, it's always going to affect your voice to a level, to a certain degree.
It's not as good. His live singing is not quite as perfect as the albums. He does sound
understandandly, because he's probably
tired.
singing into a studio mic on the album, and it's different. He doesn't,
but he's
doesn't have that same movement. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I do wonder if that's why the drumming isn't so prevalent on this one, because obviously there's more of a message in this record. He is stepping out from his comfort zone and doing vocals as well, and it obviously wanted those to be effective and he wanted to get a good performance out of his vocals, obviously. So maybe that's just the drumming fits the music. It supports the music that they've gone for. This is not a more traditionally metal record. I think this is more of a progressive sort of alternative metal record. So yeah, it makes sense that the drums aren't so high in the mix and so punchy, and I think what they're trying to achieve here suits a lower sort of drum mix it's well done. They've really considered what they're doing here.
The only thing I would say about Ghost of Corellia compared to some of the others is I do feel like it loses a little bit of momentum in the later half of the track. Not enough to ruin it completely, but the sludgier breakdown, I feel like we didn't need to hear that twice. And that for me, whenever I hear it, I always love the opening riff and get really excited, and I forget that it does drag a little bit in the end. Not enough to ruin it completely or sully the album, obviously. But I do think it is probably one of the weaker tracks.
Okay.
And speaking of weaker tracks, the next track is the title track. It's Crack the Skye.
So, speaking of weaker tracks, oh my god.
Okay. I do really like the guitar intro. Really nice opening riff that repeats throughout the track. It's very weird and proggy. It's got weird robot vocoder voices in the middle. And, I think it's weaker in the context of what some of the other tracks are like. And this one, to me, because I know what's coming, is almost like an interlude before the final track. But it's probably one of the heaviest, sludgiest tracks in the album. This is the one with Scott Kelly from Neurosis and guest vocals.
Yep.
Never listened to a Neurosis album, but he definitely brings the heat and the growls even more than Brent Hines does.
I think I did notice that this was definitely one of the heavier tracks on the record. But I do really like that atmospheric sort of moody lead guitar melody to kick things off. But yeah, then we get that big crunchy sort of Gajira-like groove again. A lot of screaming on this one as well, but it offsets it with a nice little sung refrain. It sort of like switches between the two through the verses. 3 minutes we get a big spacey breakdown again, accompanied by a really lovely atmospheric solo. And then 4:15 we get another chunky groove. I had a great time with Crack the Skye. I think it's a fantastic song. Dare I say another back-off banger?
I think you could say that. I mean, I guess it depends on the definition of the back-half banger. My quintessential back-half banger is Soul on Fire off Hymns Love Metal, and it has to be of a certain pace. So this is a back-half crusher.
I know what you mean. Yeah, this is definitely more of a stompier, groovier
So to
track,
me, it does not have it does not have the get up and dance tempo that makes it a back half banger. But I don't think we've ever quantified it in that way. So
no, that's fair. That's fair.
So if you called a back half banger, you can use your jingle twice. I don't mind. It does have a really good solo around the 4:18 mark. You've noticed that I've become much more prescriptive with the timestamps, so Lewis can get it into the show. But precisely around 4 minutes and 18 seconds, there's a great solo.
Yeah, no, I've definitely made the same timestamp myself, although maybe a little bit earlier. But I very much enjoyed Crack the Skye. I can see why it was the title track. But I think that's more based on the theming of the record, like you say. I think this one obviously directly refers to Skye and her passing and stuff. So
well, that's the chorus. I can see the pain; it's written all over your face, and that's sort of the refrain in the chorus. But this is definitely one of the more personal ones that doesn't really have. It's not so much about the plot of the weird Rasputin thing. Yeah. It's very different.
No, totally. Okay, then we're moving into the last track. This is The Last Baron.
The Last Baron.
Psychic eyes, faith and mystic power. The Last Baron. The Last Baron.
isn't that just a good name for a song?
Oh, isn't it just?
Even without hearing it, well, we're in for something here. This is the longest track.
Yeah,
It's called The Last Baron. This is about going to be, von Richthofen. Like, what are we going to get? What are we going to get here? And it's a very progressive, slow burn intro. Not too dissimilar to the Tsar. It doesn't have the keyboards.
No, yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of weird lyrics about setting the world ablaze and magical crystals. Yes, some of the lyrics include faltering footsteps, dead end path. All that I need is this wise man's staff encased in crystal. Yeah. He leads the way. I guess they'd say we could set the world ablaze.
Sounds very, very.
So this is where
progressive and interesting.
Yeah, this is where they're hitting the bongs, and it's really getting quite strange. But where did you think this was going? Where did you think this was going when you heard the first couple of minutes? Were you like, is this really how they're going to finish this?
Yeah, I assumed it was going to pick up because just across every other track on this record, it's like, okay, we've had moody, spacey moments, right? But they've never, they've never done an entire track of that. There's a lot to the music on this, and the song structures in general are very interesting. And as much as it was a good 2 minutes or 10 seconds or so before instrumentation really sort of picked up. I'd say as well the introduction of this one is actually probably the most acoustic, I suppose, across the record. You don't really hear a lot of electronic instruments until around that 2:18 I've got as my mark, and then we get a big lead guitar melody. Instrumentation starts to get more electric, and then in 3 minutes the music actually gets a lot more frenzied and the pace picks up, then you've pulled me in, you got me back again. It's like, and not that I wasn't enjoying the introduction, it was more just a case of like, okay, so this is the last track, we're gonna have a slow build, gonna do something a little bit more interesting. We haven't explored acoustic sounding instruments on this record so far, so we get a little bit of that before things pick up. Once it starts to get more frenzied, it gets, again, it's one of those things where it's like you wouldn't expect the last track to be one of the heaviest, but there are moments on this song where it's like, well, this is really heavy. I'm very much enjoying it. 5:19 I've got, there's a guitar, does something really interesting. It's got this sort of Asiatic sound kind of permeating the music now, which I thought was a really fun little introduction. 6 minutes, we get a very mathy sort of freeform refrain. You can hear that sort of jazz influence on their music.
Yes, it's a really strange. It is. That's probably the proggiest bit in the album. It's almost like a Rush kind of sound to it.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I agree completely. Yeah, no, definitely. And you can hear sort of like a Dream Theater influence as well. 8:20, there's a time change, and we get this really sort of funky riff. I love that. I thought that was a fun introduction. Something different. You're always introducing something.
So
cool.
we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this riff because it's probably one of my favorite guitarists of all time. And it's a really good use of a slide as well as palm muting. And I was looking on YouTube to see, what does that actually look like when someone's playing it? And I searched YouTube for Last Baron playthroughs, and the video was called "How to Play That Sick Riff in the Last Baron." So that is that's an even by Mastodon standards, that's a
everybody's picking up on that one.
Notoriously good riff. It's so good. I think that's I think that small bit is probably my favorite individual bit in the album. And it comes 3 minutes before the end.
It really does stand out, doesn't it? Yeah. And then at 9:20, we sort of get a reprise of the first section. We sort of return to that original sort of spacey, acoustic-y introduction. And then the album closes with just one of the best solos I've ever heard in my life. At 11 minutes 30. That's ridiculous to say. 11 minutes 30. There's a fantastic solo to close the song. Wow. Okay, that's just cool.
It's amazing, isn't it? That you think, they're going back to the setting this world base. That must be it. Presumably that's the end of the album. It's like, no, we're gonna blow the doors off. Huge finish.
Yeah, no, it's just excellent stuff. Again, it's so incredible to me that a band like Mastodon, who I wouldn't say were traditionally known for long songs, can effectively do long songs so well. Both of the tracks on this album, the Tsar and The Last Baron, are just so engaging, so interesting, so full of ideas. The entire length, I was just like, wow, that's really impressive. And then you can do 3-minute tracks like Divinations, and they're just as good. Like they're just no weakness across this record at all. I didn't come away thinking like, we could have done without that, or like that song was a little bit too much. But no, it's like 7 tracks, 50 minutes, all bangers. I think Crack the Skye is one of the best things you've introduced me to, Alan. I think this is a fantastic record, and I'm so glad to have discovered it via this means of this podcast. So yeah,
I can't get the smile off my face. I'm so happy that you're happy with it. I think the only thing that I had in my notes that you didn't cover, which wasn't much, is around the 3 minutes 10 when you get the and you get the massive drum rolls and the fast shredding riff. The backing vocals in that are weird. They're quite subtle, but it sounds like howling dogs. It reminded me of Lady and the Tramp. It is strange.
I know what you mean.
It's very low in the mix, but it is weird. I just thought I'd highlight that. That's a strange thing that I only heard when I listened to this podcast. Like, what am I listening to?
Maybe it's something I missed through my first two. Something to come back to. Or, what a dense, interesting, cool record. Like, it's just really, really fun. This is why doing this podcast is so fun. Like I think we've done it a few times recently where we've both been kind of picking things where it's like, okay, here's a band I haven't explored. I need someone to guide me through. Like let's try and do it this way instead. I think we very much started this podcast with the idea of like, we both approach our heavy music from different angles, and maybe we don't agree on everything, and that's where the interesting discussion comes from, right? Like we're not quite vibing with the same thing. But now as we've done this for however many years, it's just nice to be able to like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to discover a band, and I've got someone who can lead me through it. So yeah, it's been absolutely gorgeous to be able to finally discover Mastodon and find something as good as this. Like, I didn't think there was a bad track on this at all. I was having a great time. But what was my favourite track?
Okay. To go on for your final thoughts before we do final tracks, like for me, this one, look, there's a reason this one's in my top 3. I think you can't go wrong with most Mastodon albums, but I think this one really does stand above it. It's really heartfelt and yet over the top and wacky. Yeah. It's got amazing riffs. Pretty much every song individually stands on its own. It's just wicked. It's just a masterpiece.
Yeah. It is fantastic.
It is so good. And as I was looking through the Metal Storm ratings, I was like, wow, the only album that scored above it in 2009 was Bellacore Stone's Reach. And it's I could see how that would be a tough. I wouldn't want to pick between those two. But yeah, what a terrific album. So your favorite track, I think, was probably Divinations.
Hey, straight in there. Good man.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if, I make punk music that very, very rarely breaks 2 minutes. So it's always going to be the shortest track, I guess. But
I just start with, what's the heaviest track? What can I mostly lose moshing to?
Yeah. For you, though, maybe the Tsar?
Oh, look. It's like picking a favorite child.
Yeah.
I think for me it's always going to come back to Oblivion. I think what's the track from Crack the Skye? Are they going to roll my coffin into the incinerator? What are they gonna play at the crematorium? And it's probably going to be that one.
Yeah, no, it's
partly because I like the macabre humor of being ruled in either Oblivion or the Last Wave from Outrun, because that also amuses me, like game over credits music, something like that. So I think for me it's probably Oblivion. But at any given day, I've been enjoying the Tsar more and more in these past couple of replays. Love The Last Baron, love Divinations. It's just so much to like. So much to like.
No, I there's not a bad choice, to be honest with you, with this record, to be honest. Like, I mean, you could make maybe an argument that Ghost of Corellia and Crack the Skye aren't as interesting as the other songs, maybe. But I think they're great songs as well. So I would not decry anybody for picking them as favourites. So yeah, really good stuff. Further listening then, Alan.
Oh Jesus! Look, the Mastodon discography for you. I think there's so much to unpick. I think based on what you have liked about it and some of the shorter, harder songs.
Yeah.
You might find something like Once More Around the Sun really interesting. It's actually It's probably not one of their best regarded ones, but I really love that because it's a little bit poppier. But I think it's like wall to wall bangers.
Yeah.
Whereas the heavier, proggier stuff is probably something like Hushed and Grim, or even Blood Mountain.
Okay.
But you can pretty much listen to all it. I think my least favorite Mastodon album is probably The Hunter.
Okay.
I think it's probably their weakest one, even though Black Tongue is a really, really good track. I think it's probably their weakest. But apart from Remission, which I've listened to so little that I wouldn't even want to officially rate it. So I think The Hunter's probably the weakest. I think Emperor of Sand, although it has a really, really good opening track, it's probably doesn't leave a lasting impression.
Right, okay, yeah.
But all the others are really quite good. And Hushed and Grim is so new in a double album that I don't feel like I've really fully absorbed that one yet. So
that's a lot of music. Yeah.
Rankings. And obviously Leviathan's really good too. But as you say, it's a different album. It's all hands to the tiller. It's it's the only reason to pick Leviathan for this podcast would have been because it was really easy for me to do the show notes and just write White Whale Holy Grail in capital letters and leave it at that. Whereas I have to think of something more amusing about us travelling up through the crack in the sky. So that is the only reason in which Leviathan would be, I suppose it would have made for a cooler album art, but that's about it really.
Yeah.
So further listening, so the first one's a bit of a cheat.
Okay.
Because it has a Mastodon member in it.
Okay.
So I've got three, but I'm kind of including this one's like again 2.5, which is Killer Be Killed, and the album's called Reluctant Hero.
Oh,
so Killer Be Killed
record.
is a. Have you got a Killer Be Killed in further recommendations?
No, I haven't picked it, but no, I love that record.
Killer Be Killed's Reluctant Hero. I think so. It's got Troy Sanders, so it's obviously reminiscent of Mastodon. I think some of the tracks on that, particularly Left of Center, are very, very Mastodon-y. Very Mastodonian in style, and I have that kind of, again, crushing like divinations feel to it with good sing-along choruses, quite pop. They're almost pop metal. They're very. It's more accessible. It's probably the word I'm looking for.
So that Reluctant Hero is the second album, isn't it? Because I don't think I've heard that yet. I've only heard the debut. So yeah.
Debut album's the one with like, what's it called? Feathers of Wax or something.
Yeah. Feathers of Wax and something. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Feathers of Wax and something. Yeah. No, Reluctant Hero is the second one.
Yes, I do need to get around to that.
It's very fun. I need to get around to their first album, and you need to get into their second album.
There we go. Well, that's obviously something we need to trade.
Two real recommendations. The first one is by Intronaut, and the album's called Fluid Existential Inversions. So this is proggy, mathy sludge metal.
Yep.
And has the best lyric in an album I've heard in recent years. It's I'm going to look it up so I don't misquote it.
Okay.
And while I look that up and horribly type into the keyboard, the other album choice is by a band called Moontooth, and it's called Crux. So Moontooth is more of a rock and roll feel to it.
Okay.
It's a really interesting album, and they're quite new. They've got a new album coming out this year. But yeah, it's just a good barnstorming hard rock heavy metal feel, a bit more. Just a bit more poppy. It's not quite the same thing. It's just a lot of fun. Okay, so the lyric, the song's called Cubensis, of Fluid Existential Inversions, and the chorus is the things you've seen all melt in your mind. Drink of the liquid and discard the rind.
Hey, that's a cracking lyric.
So good. It's really weird, stonery, but very heavy, fun music. And
good stuff.
Great band, and I think that's probably the closest I could come to a recommendation off the back of Mastodon without more Mastodon, because I do feel like they're quite a unique, quite a unique sound. No one really blends that kind of southern rock plus sludge plus
Yeah.
pop and accessibility in a way. You could throw on a Mastodon track and pretty much anyone go, oh, it's pretty good actually. Oh, I begrudgingly accept it's good. Oh yeah. So I think it's a really tough band to do further listening without cop-outs like Kill or Be Killed, which is good.
Yeah.
But that's cheating. That's cheating.
I get you completely. But yeah. As for myself, I picked a couple of British ones. So I've got Boss Keloid and their album Melted on the Inch. This is sludgy progressive metal, and very much reminded me heavily of Mastodon. And I actually listened to it again post listening to Crack the Skye, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Boss Keloid definitely likes some Mastodon." Nice to be to confirm that the pick was the right choice. But yeah, no, you can definitely hear the Mastodon influence on their music quite a lot. I really, really enjoyed Melted on the Inch. I think it's a fantastic record. It came off the back of. They released an album called Herb Your Enthusiasm, which is a fantastic name for a record. But as you can imagine, that is pretty stoner as it goes, and it doesn't have an awful lot of ideas by comparison. But Melted on the Inch, a lot more interesting, just a really, really interesting record to listen to. And again, long songs that justify their length. They do a lot in their time, and it's a really good fun listen. The other one is Astro Henge and their second album, which is creatively called 2. And it is an instrumental sort of space rock, prog metal thing, and it is just a load of fun. Really, really good stuff. I have an awful lot of good fun with that record. It's a lot more intense. The songs are all quite short. I think it's over and done with in about half an hour, but it's engaging the entire time. It's heavy use of keyboards as well. They have a keyboard player in the band, and that really helps sort of like add some melody to the tracks and add all these nice little key flourishes. But it also has one of my favourite album covers of all time. It is a giant Marshall stack shaped like a piece of Stonehenge coming down to invade the Earth. And I'm just like, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. That's what exactly. And once you hear the opening track, it's like, oh yeah, I can envision what you're trying to sell me here. But yeah, really, really good fun. And again, definitely hit this sort of like spacey, progressive sort of sound that this record, Crack the Skye, also had. So yeah, those were my picks.
One thing that I didn't write down, but is actually not an interesting and probably an influence in Mastodon, is Cynic.
That's a good shout, actually.
I think with Focus, like tracks like Veil of Maya, also have that weird vocoder. Like, okay, Cynic obviously has insane drumming and fretless bass. Very prominent use of fretless bass. So that does, like, it's not the same. But it's kind of weird space rocky death metal. But I think you can hear some of the influences in albums like this. So
absolutely,
probably should have thought of that before. But I'll just be greedy and do 4 recs.
It's all good. Look, if we can guide people through, further listening and introduce people to other bands, then that's all good as far as I'm concerned. That's good stuff. But yeah, we've come to the end. That's considering that I was, this is a prog metal record. I expected us to go a lot longer than this today.
It's because it's 7 tracks.
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
Our albums are our albums. Yeah, coming soon. Our podcasts have the length is proportionate to the number of songs.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So essentially, if we had an album of 30 skits, that will be 4 hours long. I guess the exception being Saint Anger, but it does have a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
And that was
we did have a guest on that episode as well.
We did have a guest on that, and that was therapy.
Yeah.
But I think because it's number of tracks is quite short. It actually does keep the podcast shorter. Hello,
absolutely.
Keep going on about how short the podcast was. Maybe we'll stretch it out.
Yeah, well, there we go. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, as always. If you want to keep up with everything that we're doing, castironshow.co.uk is the place to go. We have all our back catalogue there, and it's the best place to get things downloaded if you want direct access to the episodes. But obviously, we're available in all your favourite podcatchers, apart from Spotify, because fuck them. And also, if you want to follow us individually, I am at Kronkblatz on Twitter. Alan is kind of on Twitter, but behind a locked thing, so we'll leave him be.
Look, if you really want to, I'll probably accept a follow request. But there was
ain't gonna be much there to see, right?
There were people. I just lurk, and there's people who followed me maybe like 6 months to a year ago. And first, I was like, why? But I did eventually accept the request. Like, fine, nothing to see here.
Exactly.
The most important ways to support the show, as always, first way is to leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. But the most important is to share Cast Iron with a friend and spread the love. There are Apple Podcast analytics now. I've not looked at them. It could be 5 people, it could be 5,000. I have no idea. But one surefire way to get that number up is to share us with a friend or two that love metal. And as Lewis says, you can find all our previous episodes on your favourite podcast app, except for Spotify, fuck 'em, or on castironshow.co.uk. And I also promised Lewis that I'm going to update the podcast artwork because I did it a year ago on a day off. And I'll update the website now. I'm committing to you live on the show.
One more thing I want to say as well. I have guested on another music podcast, which will be coming in the next few months. So it is another British rock and metal podcast called Free with this month's issue. I gave them a shout because I thought the concept was so good that I was just like, maybe I can wrangle my way on a guest spot. And they review the free cover compilations that come with magazines. And I thought that was so good. I was just like, yes, please. Can I do the Kerrang high voltage cover record, please? And they were like, gladly. So that will be coming soon. And I think they're a great bunch of lads and they definitely deserve a little shout as well. So look forward to that very soon.
Well, yeah, that's great. We'll get that link up on the website when it's due. Although I can't believe you're in another podcast. I feel like you're announcing you're having an affair on the air. Like, okay, that's great.
It was a guest spot. I'm not going to be there regularly. Don't worry, buddy. But good lads. But yes, thank you very much as always for listening. We have been Cast Iron. This has been Mastodon's Crack the Skye, and we will see you next time.